There's lots of different clovers out there, and clover is king when it comes to the whitetail world. We're going to start with some perennial clovers. Ladino clover is a white clover. Ladino and red clover are two of the best clovers that we can plant for wildlife. Ladino is a perennial, which means it will grow for several years in a row before it needs to be replanted. Red clover is actually a biennial, which means it's supposed to live 2 years, but with good management, you actually can get 3 or more years out of that. White clover and red clover are planted across the whitetails range. Incredible species for deer. They can feed deer all spring. They slow down in growth during the summer when it gets really hot. That growth returns in the fall and then obviously slows off during the winter. However, we can provide food for several months of the year with a white and a red clover and provide tremendous hunting attraction during particularly early seasons, but well into the fall, especially in places that don't get a lot of snow or don't get really cold. So white and red clover are always good choices from a deer end. Now, from an annual clover perspective, and there are numerous clovers that only live 1 year, my two favorite by far are crimson and arrowleaf clover. Now, these won't live up north, but you can get 2/3 of the US and still get really good production from these. Northern Pennsylvania is a little too far north, so if you draw a line across there, if you're north of that line, you're not going to have much luck with these. But anywhere south of that line, these will grow extremely well for you. Being annual clovers, we plant these in the spring. They will grow during the year, provide a lot of food for deer, and be extremely attractive. And then they go to seed, and we'll drop those seeds on the ground where they are. Now, the nice thing is, if we do a good job managing that food plot, we actually can get several years out of these because we are allowing them to reseed themselves. So an example of this, we can plant them, let them grow that year, mature, seed falls on the ground. Then that next spring, we can come in and actually herbicide what is there before the clovers will grow back, kill that off, and then since those seeds are on the ground, they actually can then grow again. So just because it's an annual clover doesn't mean that you will only get 1 year out of it. With good management, you actually can get several years. So from a clover perspective, lots and lots of options available for hunters from both the annual end and the perennial end. But at the end of the day, you can't go wrong with clover. Deer are going to love them. Very economical and extremely productive relative to the time and cost that it takes to get them established wherever you are in the whitetails range. When it comes to selecting clovers, particularly if you're going to mix them together, I often will keep my annuals separate from my perennials, particularly because that way it allows me to use my perennials in a multiple year system. I often will add chicory with those as well. Chicory is a really drought tolerant plant that deer love, and it often can carry that food plot during a dry year, and it is a great companion because that's also a perennial to use with your perennial clovers, your red and your white clovers. Other situations, if I'm planting an annual, I will plant, and if I can, those crimson and arrowleaf in together, and often will mix them with a cereal grain like oats or like wheat, because if they are all annuals, that gives me more options from both an herbicide perspective to manage that plot, as well as then being able to either combine that with another species or be able to mix it out after that first year. So it's not unheard of to mix annual and perennial clovers, but in most cases, you can provide yourself more management options if you do keep those two separate in different areas.